One road connects nearly all of the lands between. Each stone tile in the road is marked with this symbol, a group of golden rings in a diamond formation. This road and this symbol are remnants of an ancient era, of a civilization whose influence reached every corner of the lands between. This road tells the story of an empire. This road is the Gold Road. I call this network of roads the Gold Road because of the gold coloring of the symbol on the stone tiles. Since we don't know what civilization built the Gold Road, we'll just refer to them as the Gold Road civilization for now. Lucky for us, there is a lot of information that can be learned from these roads. Where this network of roads extends can tell us where this civilization originated and spread. Architectural motifs associated with the road will help us understand their culture. We'll find clues to help us date when the road was built. We can analyze these architectural motifs just like we do the textual evidence in the game, except instead of shared words linking different concepts, we're dealing with shared visual images. But as VatiVidya mentioned in one of his videos, doing architectural analysis in this game is very tricky. And he is correct. New civilizations build on top of old ones, structures are repurposed, artistic motifs evolve over time and are shared between cultures. Some of this stuff is just for the sake of game design. But there does seem to be a signal in the noise, a method to the madness. Since the game's release, myself and a group of fellow Elden Ring archaeologists have been trying to piece together the patterns into a story that makes sense. This channel is a product of that work. That all being said, let us follow the Gold Road and see where it leads. The Gold Road's origin seems to be Leyndell's main entrance. From here, it splits into two branches. The main road leads down the steps of Leyndell towards the Grand Lift of Dectus, becoming the Altus Highway. On the other side of Dectus becomes the Bellum Highway, which leads across the bridge to the main entrance of Raya Lucaria. The second Altus section branches off from Leyndell's main entrance in the inner walls, through the side entrance in the outer walls, down past Dominula, and across the forest-spanning Great Bridge to reconnect with the Altus Highway section. There is also a bridge with Gold Road tiles leading to Mount Gelmir. Another part of the Gold Road is the Liurnian Highway, which begins at the end of the bridge in Gate Town, leads south across the bridge next to Stormvale, and then runs all the way through Limgrave to the outer walls of Castle Morn. There's a second Liurnian section, which runs from the back entrance of Stormvale through the Laskiar ruins, Gate Town proper, and towards the Carrion Study Hall, though parts of it are sunken into the lake. In Caelid, the Gold Road starts at the Limgrave border and snakes around the swamp of Aeonia. These stone tiles don't just appear in roads, but in buildings as well. Gold Road tiles line the floors of the minor Erdtree church, the shaded castle, and the apostate church in the northern consecrated snowfields. We find them in the floors of the Grand Lift of Dectus and the Grand Lift of Rold. Interestingly, there's a single Gold Road tile in the foundation of every lookout tower. Here's a complete map of everywhere that we find Gold Road tiles. The presence of the Gold Road in these locations suggests that these places were built by the same civilization. Some of these locations, like the apostate church, are really remote. The influence of this civilization must have extended to the furthest reaches of the lands between. Here's where things get interesting. The Romans are famous for building a network of roads across Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. These roads bound their empire together and are a big reason why it lasted over 400 years. As they conquered, they built roads. Roads allow for the efficient movement of armies, civilians, and trade goods. The easier it is for an army to mobilize, the easier it is to enforce the rule of law quickly and over greater distances. If the roads are protected, it's easier for merchants to transport goods to sell. In turn, the regions of the empire become economically bound to one another. People being able to safely move from one region to another results in increased cultural exchange. That's how Christianity spread across Europe. It traveled along the roads of the Roman Empire. Both Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin love to borrow ideas from real history to incorporate into their own worlds. In A Song of Ice and Fire, aka Game of Thrones, the Valyrians built a network of roads to unite their empire. The Gold Road may be directly inspired from the Roman Empire's network of roads too. Roman roads consisted both of local unpaved roads and long-distance stone-paved highways connecting major cities. On the Gold Road, we have stone-paved highways like the Altus and Bellum highways. We also see local unpaved roads, like how the Gold Road at the Limgrave-Caelid border becomes a dirt road until it rejoins with the Gold Road near Stormvale. The Romans built their roads to deal with rainwater. The major roads were often cambered for drainage and flanked with ditches to catch runoff. The Altus and Bellum stretches of the Gold Road have these curved sections inlaid, which may act as drainage channels and redirect rainwater from the middle of the road to the sides. To ensure the safety of travelers, Roman roads were guarded by military outposts. I said that we find Gold Road tiles in the floors of the lookout towers, a clue that they were built by the Gold Road civilization. As their name Lookout Towers implies, they would have acted as military outposts guarding sections of the road. And indeed, every tower, with the exception of the Tower of Return in the Weeping Peninsula, is in close proximity to the Gold Road. All of these parallels to the Roman Empire seem to imply that the civilization who built the Gold Road should be classified as an empire. Roman roads were built over centuries through the expansion and consolidation of the Roman Empire. Certain parts of the Gold Road are probably older than others because the roads were built over a long period of time, perhaps over many campaigns of war. This explanation could account for certain differences in the design of the Gold Road throughout the lands between. For example, the road stretching from the main gate of Leyndell to the main gate of Raya Lucaria, that is, the Altus Highway, has a number of unique features that are not seen in any other section of the Gold Road. Along this stretch of road, the tiles are laid in a diamond formation, and there are the drainage channels that we talked about earlier. Most of the other parts of the Gold Road have the tiles aligned in a square formation and have no drainage channels. This section of the road also has unique architectural features. There's this stone circle design, these columns, and these statues inlaid in the road. One explanation for why only this single stretch of road contains these unique features is that this may have been the extent of the empire at the time the road was built. For this reason, I believe that this part of the Gold Road is the oldest, and I refer to it as the Old Gold Road. The other sections of Gold Road could have been built as part of later military expansions. At the very least, the unique features of the Old Gold Road tell us that there was a special relationship between Raya Lucaria and Leyndell when these roads were built. Speaking of military expansions, the Romans used their roads to link the major cities within their empire, cities which became part of that empire through alliance or conquest. This idea implies that the locations linked by the Gold Road existed prior to its construction, which can tell us something about what the world looked like before the Gold Road Empire. For example, the Gold Road only extends to the outer walls of Castle Morn. This could mean that these walls, and perhaps Castle Morn, were already built by the time the Gold Road was created. When the Romans conquered, they often did so in extremely bloody fashion. When Julius Caesar marched north on his campaign to conquer Central Europe, he is said to have slaughtered 1 million Gauls. Perhaps this is what happened at Castle Morn. This could explain why we hear stories of a revenger whose entire clan was slaughtered. So who built it? Who built the Gold Road? Whose empire was linked by these roads? The Romans say, all roads lead to Rome. But in the lands between, all roads lead to Leyndell. Leyndell built the Gold Road. It seems obvious, doesn't it? The Gold Road is prominent around Leyndell. The section of the road leading up to its main gate is accompanied by intricate designs and sophisticated architecture. It's like the rest of the Gold Road is just foreplay to keep you going to Leyndell. But saying that Leyndell built the Gold Road is about as useful an answer as saying Rome built the network of roads that span across Europe. The Rome that built those roads was the Rome of over 2,000 years ago, a very different Rome from today. Rome's history is long, and its civilization has metamorphosed many times. Rome was founded as a kingdom of unified tribes in 750 BC. The construction of the roads began around 300 BC during the era of the Roman Republic, which evolved into the Roman Empire in 27 BC, and nearly 500 years passed before it collapsed in 476 AD. Across those hundreds of years, Rome metamorphosed from a polytheistic republic ruling part of central Italy into a Christian empire whose governing borders stretched over hundreds of miles. Rome isn't a good enough answer. We want to know which version of Rome and when. Which version of Leyndell and when. Sometimes, the answers you seek are right under your nose. I mean, literally. The symbol on each stone tile of the Gold Road is like a maker's mark. That is, it's a symbol of ownership representing the people who made it. This symbol bears resemblance to the Erdtree sigil, but the central 4 rings, representing the Elden Ring, are not in a triangle shape like the Erdtree sigil. They're in a diamond shape. The only other place we see a version of the Elden Ring with 4 rings in a diamond shape is in Malekith's room in Farum Azula. What could this mean? One explanation is that the modern-day Erdtree sigil may be an evolution of an older design. Like the Erdtree sigil represents the current age's Elden Ring, this sigil could represent the Farum Azula Elden Ring. The Elden Ring as it once was, during an age when Farum Azula was a dominant power. If that is what the sigil represents, that would mean that the Gold Road was built by an Elden-worshipping, Farum-associated civilization. In turn, this would mean that it was built before Farum Azula was struck by a meteorite and crumbled. This is plausible. We find huge pieces of the Farum Azula ruins on top of the Gold Road, probably because they fell there during the meteor strike. A large piece is crushing this part of the old Gold Road near Bellum Church in Liurnia of the Lakes. This piece is blocking the Liurnian Highway. Another piece is blocking the road in Limgrave. This could only be if Farum Azula crumbled once the Gold Road was already built. It's likely that the architects of the Gold Road also constructed the grand lifts, the walls of Leyndell, and these large stone buildings, which I refer to collectively as the tan stone architecture. This tan stone bears resemblance to the tan stone of the Farum ruins, as does the overall design of the square buildings. The tan stone architecture is covered with the dragon evolution motif, a design that is pervasive throughout Farum Azula and the Bestial Sanctum, but most notably is found in Placidusax's arena, meaning it's as old as he is. Then there is this stone circle design found along the old Gold Road and at the Grand Lifts, which is also in Farum Azula and at the Bestial Sanctum. Further supporting the notion that Leyndell is Rome and the Gold Road Empire is akin to the Roman Empire is that this stone circle design was present in early 2nd century BC Roman art. This motif is called a hexafoil. You form it by creating overlapping rings, which look similar to the design of the Elden Ring. This could explain its prominence in Elden architecture. Here is a repeating pattern of hexafoils. They form a hexagon, and we see a hexagon in the seal of Raya Lucaria. Perhaps the hexafoil is the key to linking the Elden Ring design and the hexagon design of Raya Lucaria. The hexafoil circle and dragon evolution motifs are found all over the Elden Throne, Queen's Bedchamber, and Erdtree Sanctuary Complex, along with other Farum-specific motifs, linking their construction to the same builders and time period as the Gold Road and Tan Stone architecture. This makes a great deal of sense because this complex of buildings is integral to the Elden religion, and we've already linked the Gold Road tiles to an Elden culture. Placidusax was said to have been Elden Lord in the age before the Erdtree. Farum culture is an Elden culture. The evidence suggests that at some point, Farum Azula and Leyndell were allies, participating in cultural exchange with each other. The question now becomes, when and how did this relationship start? Perhaps inhabitants from Farum Azula also founded Leyndell. Or maybe they conquered and assimilated it under Placidusax's rule when he was Elden Lord. Or maybe they allied together against a greater threat during a time of war. The Gold Road itself may offer us more clues as to when and how this relationship began. Roads themselves are a kind of technology which serve to benefit civilization. A common pattern in history is that new technologies evolve in sophistication over time, meaning that less sophisticated versions of a technology likely originated earlier. While Leyndell certainly perfected the art of creating stone tile paved roads, they do not seem to be where the idea originated from. The stone tiles of the Gold Road are marked with this Erdtree seal-like design, but elsewhere in the lands between, we can find roads paved with unmarked square stone tiles. Farum Azula has unmarked stone roads running through it. Unmarked stone roads paved the way to the Leyndell and Caelid Colosseums. And there is a long stretch of this kind of road starting in Sellia that intersects with the Gold Road in Caelid. All of these places are associated with Farum culture. Farum Azula, obviously. Sellia is nearby Dragonbarrow and the Bestial Sanctum. The Colosseums are filled with Farum architectural motifs. The conclusion seems to be that it was Farum culture that originated the technology of paving roads with stone tiles, and the creation of the more sophisticated Gold Road came later. This hypothesis explains something very peculiar about Sellia's Gold Road. The road with the Gold Road tiles begins just over the Limgrave border, but after we get into Caelid, we find that the stone tiles become unmarked. We find Gold Road tiles again, south of Caelem, but they end in a pretty random place just north of the Caelid Waypoint ruins. From the Caelid Waypoint ruins to Sellia, the tiles in the road are just blank stone tiles. But if you look along the side of the road, you'll find Gold Road tiles and walls. What this may mean is that the inhabitants of Caelid already had a paved road prior to the construction of the Gold Road, and the Gold Road section was added later, perhaps during consolidation of the Empire. Within Sellia, the main road is paved with unmarked stone tiles, but we find patches of Gold Road tiles, like they were added later as part of a repair. This explanation is supported by the fact that these stone pillars, which are found along the old Gold Road and at the Elden Throne, are also found leading up to Sellia. This architectural detail puts the construction of Sellia's Gold Road within the same historical strata as the construction of the old Gold Road and the Elden Throne. If we are correct that the unmarked stone-paved road in Sellia is from earlier than the Gold Road, this would mean that Sellia was constructed before the Gold Road was built, before the Empire. In fact, it may even be that Sellia's inhabitants were early inhabitants of Leyndell, given how the building architecture of Lower Leyndell and Sellia are nearly exactly the same. Farum culture is associated with dragons and with beasts. It's not shocking that Farum culture would excel at stonemasonry. Bestial magic is all about rocks. The ancient dragons are made of stone, and we know that the beasts use kilns to create their shields. There is far more to be said about the origins of the relationship between Farum Azula and Leyndell, but for that we'll need to dive into the cities themselves, which we'll do in future videos. This video is about roads. Yeah, that's right. You've been watching 20 minutes of lore about a road in a video game. That's how incredible this world building is. At this point, you might be thinking, it's no surprise that all of this Farum symbolism is found in Leyndell. At the end of the war against the ancient dragons, Godwyn defeated, but then befriended, Fortisax, which gave rise to the ancient dragon cult in the capital. That explains when and where the Farum influence came from. Except there is one huge, literally enormous issue with this explanation. That war began when the ancient dragon Grand Sax attacked. This attack was the only time in the historical record that Leyndell's walls are known to have fallen. We can see the evidence of this assault in the gigantic form of Grand Sax's body still hanging over Leyndell, crushing what lies beneath it. What lies beneath are the very walls we have been discussing. These walls, covered in Farum symbols. These walls were built before Grand Sax attacked. Farum Azula was influencing Leyndell long before the war against the ancient dragons. In fact, given how Grand Sax's body is crushing all of these white-walled, gold-roofed buildings, we can say that these buildings were all built before the war as well. These buildings are all quite sophisticated. It makes me think that the war against the ancient dragons actually came quite late in Leyndell's history. Additionally, it's likely that the Gold Road was built before the war against the giants. The Grand Lift of Rold takes us to the mountaintops where the giants are. It would only make sense to build such a lift if you were actually planning to use it to go to the mountaintops. We know that Marika sealed the path to the mountaintops after the war against the giants, so the Grand Lifts must have been built before the war. We can speculate further on the Elden religion that built the Elden Throne and Gold Road thanks to the Shadow of the Erdtree gameplay trailer. This woman is seated in a room with bird cages and designs that look like those we find in Raya Lucaria. This woman looks identical to these statues at the Grand Lift of Dectus. These statues represent the inhabitants of the region the lift leads to, which is why there are Erdtree soldiers guarding the entrances leading to Altus Plateau. This suggests that this woman, and the culture she came from, were in power in Liurnia when the Grand Lift of Dectus, and by extension the Old Gold Road, were built. This culture is likely the Carian culture, given how the woman and these statues look like the woman in the Carian inversion statue. The map of Liurnia item tells us that the western coast of Liurnia has always been associated with Carian royalty. Carian culture is very old. Then, we see this outside shot of a castle, which looks like castles in the lands between. These banners have this symbol, which seems to represent flame and the 3 fingers on one side, and light and the 2 fingers on the other. The banners are blue and gold like these Raya Lucaria carpets. The crescents on top look like the tops of banners we find at the southern entrance to Raya Lucaria, and they are the same crescents on the tops of these statues' poles. It makes me believe that this fog door could lead to this woman. Or it may lead to Mesmer. The same sigil is carved on the floor beneath Mesmer. On the floor, you can just barely see this design. This design is found at the Grand Lifts, the approach up to Leyndell, and all over the Elden Throne. We don't see this pattern anywhere else in the lands between. Believe me, I've checked. What this could mean is that the inhabitants of this castle could have been a part of the alliance which built the Elden Throne. We can even see an Elden Throne chair behind Mesmer in this shot. Additionally, we can see this pattern on the floor of the Lion Beast boss fight. This design is found in the center of the hexafoil circle design. I would reason that this symbol is a primitive version of the hexafoil circle. It began as this symbol and the hexafoils were added later, possibly due to the influence of the Elden Ring design. We find beast symbols at the Elden Throne, and the fortified manor has a giant beast symbol on its front. Beast culture had a presence in Leyndell from an early date. It may be that both the woman and Mesmer are within this castle. After all, the gameplay trailer references the Erdtree faithful and says, "They were never saints, they just happened to be on the losing side of a war." This woman and Mesmer may both be these Erdtree faithful who were a part of the Elden faith when the Elden Throne and the Gold Road were built. They became losers after the war against the giants, when the giants' flame was sealed, when flame was excised from the Elden faith, from the era when the beasts were gifted intelligence, when the 5 fingers were whole, before the 2 fingers and 3 fingers were split. So here's what we've figured out so far. There was an empire that spanned across the lands between, unified by a series of roads. The civilization responsible for that empire originated in Leyndell and built the Gold Road, the Grand Lifts, and the walls of Leyndell. They worshipped the Elden religion at a time when the Elden Ring probably looked like this, and they were heavily influenced by Farum culture. Celia's founding likely predates the Gold Road Empire. Farum Azula was struck by a meteor after the Gold Road was built, and the war against the ancient dragons seems to have come relatively late in Leyndell's history. These individuals from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC seem to have been influencing Leyndell at the time the Gold Road and Elden Throne were constructed. We'll reference these takeaways in future videos as we endeavor to piece together the four-dimensional puzzle that is the timeline of this convoluted history. If you enjoyed this video and feel that it contributes positively to the Elden Ring lore community, please leave a like to help boost its visibility within YouTube's algorithm. This is also my first video, and it would do wonders for my confidence to see positive feedback. I want to thank my fellow amateur archaeologists from our Elden Ring archaeology Discord community who participated in theory crafting the past 2 years with me. This channel is a testament to the shared love of environmental storytelling that we fostered. Love you guys, and thank you for watching.